SCCRESA TV presents in 3, 2, 1, Dateline Schools with your host, Terry Harrington.
Local educators recently had the privilege of participating in the 8th annual 21st Century Learning Symposium to learn how to better impact our students' learning and teaching. And this week on Dateline Schools, I had the privilege of talking with one of the keynote speakers at this year's symposium, author Will Richardson. And Will, so here in Port Huron, and you're sharing some of this vision with us. Where can we as a community start? Where do we need to start making that change so we're not just doing what we've always done and getting the results we've always had?
Well, I think you have to talk first, to be honest with you. And I think the key is, though, too, that if you're going to have meaningful conversations around change, you have to make sure that everyone who's engaged in those conversations has kind of the same context for how the world looks right now. All too often, what you'll find in many districts and communities is that while there are well-meaning, caring people who are talking about what to do in schools, the problem is that some of those people who are at that table having those conversations are looking at the world through a 20th century lens, where they think that the curriculum is scarce, that they have to get it here at school. And some even with a 19th century lens, that we still need chalk and chalkboards. You're not going to have very productive conversations around change unless everyone is basically educated as to what's happening today. So, when I work with districts, I basically engage them in a year-long conversation with students, parents, community members, teachers, administrators, everybody from throughout the district. And basically all we do is we just learn. We just read things, we just talk about stuff, so that when we're ready then to create a new vision, we all have a context for that conversation. It's really hard to do it without doing that initial work to kind of get ourselves up to speed as to exactly what's happening in the world right now.
You mentioned earlier too this week that you have 2 kids. I've had children go through the districts, and now I've got grandchildren going through the districts. It's really hard to change that whole perception too for the parents, because they only know education, but what they experience in it.
Absolutely. And that may be one of the biggest barriers we have to change, is that, parents aren't showing up on the superintendent's door, knocking on it and saying, hey, please connect my kids to strangers out there who can teach them how to do all sorts of interesting things around the things they care about. Yet that's what my learning world looks like. That's what a lot of kids' learning worlds look like. I mean, I talked about my kids today about how their passions are around, health and nutrition and basketball and things like that. They're learning more about those things from people who they don't know online, who they've kind of vetted and determined are good people who aren't going to do them harm. They've done that work so that they're sure that the people they're interacting with are healthy for them. But those are great opportunities to learn, and that doesn't look anything like what you experienced when you were in school, what I experienced, what most parents experienced. So it's difficult for parents too. But again, I think what's interesting is more and more parents now are showing up and going, we have to do this differently. This isn't working for my child or my children any longer. They're not really being prepared for the eventualities of what they're going to experience when they get out from high school and either go to college or go into a career. And it's got to start to look different. So again, it's growing. I can feel it now, finally. I'm much more optimistic today than I was even a year ago.
We'll be back with more tomorrow. For Dateline Schools, I'm Terry Harrington.